Welcome aboard. This is the Miles to Go podcast. And now here's your host, Ed Pizza.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Miles to Go podcast. After a few weeks away from each other, Mr. Kerr and I had a drive-by this week in lovely Las Vegas, Nevada. The technology and our energy levels did not go in our favor, and an episode was not recorded in person. So we are recording from opposite sides of the country right now, as Mr. Kerr is in Vegas, and I am finally home for more than 36 hours. Mr. Kerr, how the heck are you?
I'm looking forward to being home for more than 36 hours for the first time in, oh man, it's been a while. 2 weeks in New York, home for a quick drive-by. I went to London, which I know we're going to talk about. Then I was home for 24 hours, and now I'm here in Vegas. So all kinds of stuff going on. I'm doing pretty good, man. Just had a really cool lunch, got a really cool evening ahead, doing some really awesome stuff here with the Virtuoso Travel Week. Excited, but very much looking forward to getting home.
Yeah, and I'm sorry I couldn't stay for the whole thing, but I needed to get home. And you and I have been battling fatigue in a way that I don't know that either one of us has really had this sort of a string of events. So we're going to talk a little bit about my Japan trip today. I'm not going to recap the whole thing because I want to hear a little bit more about Richard's London trip because he stayed at Great Scotland Yard, which I stayed at late last year. So I want to hear him and compare notes on that. And then we're going to talk a little bit about Southwest. That's come up a few times in the Slack community. We've got a bunch of listener questions as well, but I think we're going to hold those for next week because none of them were time sensitive. And we'll also try to finish recapping Japan next week as well. A little bit of housekeeping and a big thanks to Clint for filling in last minute for us. If you want to text us or leave us a voicemail, 571-293-6659. He is at Kerr Points on all those social media channels. I am at Pizza in Motion. The show is Miles to Go Podcast on TikTok and Instagram. You can email me, ed@pizzainmotion.com. Lastly, since I just got off of a phone call with Mike from our Slack community, if you want to be a member of our Slack community, sort of like our version of Patreon, we have weekly happy hours. We're scheduling a couple of meetups for the fall, and you even get access to quote unquote travel experts like me. Talking about Japan with Mike, who's doing almost a replica of the trip that I did. So yeah, Mr. Kerr, it was a whirlwind. Well, actually, I'll leave it to you. I know he said we're going to talk Kyoto, but I can talk Kyoto or I can talk Tokyo Disney. What are you in the mood for?
I want to hear all about Kyoto because I think that's a place that everybody listening to this podcast is either gone or if they haven't, they really want to go.
Yes. Yeah, and it's funny because, I had never been to Kyoto prior to this trip. Been to Japan a handful of times, and Tokyo was always my spot, a couple of work trips, stuff like that. We did Kyoto, and I'll admit, I definitely plagiarized a bit. Our good friend Summer had been there, just a handful of months ago. She did it for spring break, and so we stole a couple of things from her timeline. And I know you've been there a number of times in the past because you actually vetted the list of stuff that our family put together for activities. And I would say at a high level, it's definitely the most interesting home base that we've had for an Asian trip. I definitely felt like Tokyo's a very, very interesting and unique place, but I think we really felt, more comfortable in Kyoto. Now, we stayed at the Hyatt Regency, which is on the west side of town, sort of away from everything. The hotel was fine, thought the staff was pleasant, but it's not really in a very authentic neighborhood. It's also not really close to anything. You're not going to walk to a bunch of restaurants. You're walking 10 minutes to the subway or the train network, which is a, perfectly easy way to get around town. But the 10-minute walk when it was essentially 100 degrees every day was tough. So I think overall, I would choose either of the other two Hyatt properties if I was going to go back. There's a Hyatt place right in downtown that a bunch of folks have said is the best Hyatt place they've ever stayed at.
Yeah.
The other thing was, so we were going to go Summer. One of the things that was on her storyline was a jewelry store that she went to. And for folks that are watching, or actually for folks that are listening, I'm holding up a ring. So my wife had this idea, Richard, I just want to admit in a vulnerable moment that as I've put on weight over the years, my wedding ring doesn't fit anymore. My fingers are too fat. So
that is the best of us.
I had a flexible ring for a while, but my wife had the idea, because we're way into past our 20th wedding anniversary, she had the idea of following Summer's lead and getting rings made. And so there's a store in Kyoto, and there's a couple locations, and one of the locations was in a more touristy but also authentic area to hang out in. And so we went there, and the guy drops us off right in front of the Park Hyatt Kyoto. And I'm like, oh, this is where the Park Hyatt is. And I just felt like it would have been a much more authentic neighborhood to hang out in. And so short story on the rings, you go in, there's a bunch of preset rings that you can pick. and then they'll tailor the style, the finish, all that stuff. And in the span of 15 minutes, they made me a ring, and they made my wife a new ring. We all got silver rings, and the 3 rings total were less than $100. So not an expensive thing. And then they were able to, I'm sure nobody will be able to see it on the camera, but we actually had, the woman was able to engrave in the interior ring. We had Kyoto engraved in hiragana characters on the inside, and then the date that we had the rings made so that we would have that as a memory of the trip. Oh,
what a heart-shaped moment for the Pizzarellos. I'm happy for you. You mentioned that we were sitting at a sports book there Friday in the MGM, but you really took advantage of the yen rate. So a lot of great deals.
my God. Yes.
It was a great time to go because of how cheap everything was.
Yeah, and remind me, when you were living there, the yen was like 70 or 80 yen to the dollar?
It was like 85. 85 for my time there. Yeah.
Yeah, 168 when we were there.
Yeah. If every dollar had gone twice as far during my time, that would have been pretty awesome to have that experience.
And that, I mean, so there were 2 things that we ate a lot of while we were there. My son really wanted to try Wagyu. So, and, when in Rome.
Good lad, as one does, as one should. Yeah.
Right. And then we ate a lot of sushi. And it was all just, the conversion rate made it very, very cheap. I mean, the most expensive Wagyu we had was at the Grand Hyatt Tokyo, which we'll talk about next week. But we went to an izakaya in Kyoto that the hotel recommended for us. And I think the meal for the 4 of us, including some Wagyu, was less than $100, including my wife had a couple glasses of wine. We had Wagyu, we had sushi, we had a bunch of other small plates, and it was like $75 or $80 for the 4 of us. Unbelievable.
That was the exact same price we paid here in Vegas on Friday, right? It wasn't any more expensive than that.
Sure, yeah, exactly, just like that. Yeah, yeah. I was telling someone and we'll, obviously we talked a little bit about Hawaii last week, but after paying this price for all of our meals in Japan, we get off the plane in Hawaii and go to have lunch at Monkey Pod, and lunch at Monkey Pod was $200. I'm like, I don't think I paid $200 for anything other than one meal in Kyoto. So based on your advice, we did a day trip from Kyoto to Nara, and that was I lead with that because we did other trips, but that was by far our favorite activity. So the reason to go is that they say that the deer that live there are sacred creatures and that they're quote unquote domesticated. I would argue that the deer that are outside the park are not necessarily domesticated. I think that they think that we're domesticated and that they treat us like their pets, because you buy these packs of crackers to feed the deer, and they're dirt cheap. Pack of crackers is like 100 yen. So, whatever, 75 cents.
Yeah.
But the deer are all around these stands where they're selling the crackers outside of the park, and the deer are very aggressive. And so one deer nipped my son in the leg when he wasn't giving him cracker fast enough, left a little welt on his leg. And my wife shrieked at one point and then turned around and looked at me and tried to keep it PG, but said something along the lines of that other than the deer, the only people that had gotten that familiar with her in her life were her female doctor and me. So the deer were pretty aggressive outside of the parks. But what was really special was once we got inside the park, once we got inside to Nara Park, which is a massive park with a big shrine, ton of trees, there were less total deer. They were very docile. They would walk up to you and bow and wait for a cracker. Very polite. And was a really special experience because, I've never hung out with a domesticated deer before. Never had a deer bow to me for sure. And it was like a little bit of sunlight filtering through the trees in the park, but otherwise very quiet. This massive temple amongst these tall trees. It was just a really interesting experience.
What else did you do besides the deer? Like, what else do you think would be worth it?
In Nara, that was all we did because we had an activity planned later that afternoon back in Kyoto. The only thing I would say about Nara, too, is if you're going to go, there's 2 lines that go from Kyoto. There's the regular Japan Rail line and there's a Kintetsu line. I'll put a link to this in the show notes, but I would take the Kintetsu line because they have private train cars that are better for viewing. So they have a bunch of different car styles, including some like tall, high back chairs with massive panoramic windows that you can watch the countryside as you take the ride. And it's also an express train. So that train station is 5 minutes from the front of the park. Whereas if you go the Japan Rail route, you're going to be a 20-minute walk. And what we consistently found the entire time we were in Japan, it's hot there in the summer.
It was hot.
But the normal 90-degree temperatures were literally 100 degrees. We were 99 to 102 pretty much every day. So the heat made it difficult. I think we spent a day in downtown, and then the other day that I think is worthwhile, there's the bamboo forest on the east side of town. There's some touristy stuff around there. Like, it's probably the most touristy area that we walk through. But bamboo forest early in the morning, I think, is great. And then if you come out the back of the bamboo forest, you can walk along the water and then down a hill and then across a bridge. You know all this, but this is for the people listening and watching. And then there's a monkey sanctuary up on top of a very big hill. And we did not know about the hill ahead of time, but that part was a little bit tough in 100-degree heat. And what we found when we got there was there were a bunch of restaurants around there, all booked up, with tourists and stuff like that. So a little tough to find a place to eat. We did the walk up. It was, don't quote me on this, but I want to say it was like, I don't know, 1,600 yen a person. So maybe like $8-10 a person. It wasn't very expensive, but the monkeys are everywhere. They're very domesticated. And so like it felt a little touristy, but there's at the top. Did you do this, by the way, ever when you were there?
I never did the monkey sanctuary. Nope.
So there's a shed up on the top of the mountain-ish thing, and you can go into the shed. So like outside, the monkeys are just roaming free. But if you go into the shed, you can buy a single bag of food per person because I don't want the monkeys to get sort of overwhelmed with food. And it's fresh bananas and peanuts. And then the shed, the four walls of the shed are just chicken wire. And then like a little rail underneath, and you set the food down the rail, and the monkey comes up and eats it right in front of you. And that part was cool.
Did the monkey also bow before taking the banana?
The monkey did not bow. No, the monkey just jabbered at us, kind of like you. I won't go into a ton of detail about Universal Studios Japan. We did it to go do the Super Mario Nintendo Land, and I would say I was resoundingly disappointed. The heat made it tough anyway, but it was by far the most expensive thing we did. And I would say we spent well over $500 for 4 park tickets and access to Nintendo Land and express passes. I think we rode 2 rides, sweated incredibly, stood in line for everything, including like just a bottle of water inside Nintendo Land. And finally, we're just like, it's just too hot. We got to go. So I largely viewed that as a wasted day.
You stood in line for everything equals express pass?
Really? The way their express passes work over there is they don't cover every ride. You pick what you want. And so there were like 15 different packages on the website, and it's all like different times. So like, do you want to be in Harry Potter Land at this time? Do you want to be in Nintendo at this time? And when we got there, we had a reservation for Harry Potter Land. As it turned out, Harry Potter Land reservations didn't matter because they just let everybody in whenever, which meant that we stood in line for the 3 broomsticks for lunch in unbelievable heat for 35 minutes because it was the only food option. The kids stood inside the candy store, Dukes or whatever, Honey Dukes. I stood in line. Honest to God, like I'm not a wuss for this sort of, well, I guess I am a wuss according to you, but it was.
Kids, their softballs up like that, man.
Yeah, I gotta be careful. Clint didn't insult me last week, so I've just been a while. So, but I literally thought I was going to pass out standing in the sun, waiting in line for the restaurant. No shade, no nothing. It was that hot. Like we turned a corner at one point and I was just like woozy. So the heat just we really struggled with it. But because we thought there was timed entry, we didn't get there super early. Once we got there and found out there was no timed entry, it was wall to wall people. Everybody was just there. On the flip side, Nintendo, there was timed entry there. But what we came to find out, which we probably should have realized, was nobody leave. They love Nintendo Land. And so it was just packed with people because we picked our time for a little bit later in the afternoon, wall to wall people. And I thought they way over commercialized it because it was already like you're paying $30 for the slap band so you can play all the games inside. But, Mario and Luigi come out for picture taking, which, something my son would enjoy. You can't use your camera to take pictures with Mario and Luigi. You can only use their camera, and then you have to buy the picture package. And the picture package was not cheap. And I was like, after everything we paid to not even get a free photo of Mario and Luigi, I just felt like.
So if you stand by the photographer and try and use your camera, they're like, no, or they have it set up where.
Literally, like I pulled my camera out, and they came right over and stood in front of me and started waving at me. No camera, no camera, no camera.
Might take it. I might use the camera anyways.
Well, you're taller than all of them, so I might.
Yeah.
that was my summary on that was our summary on our time in Kyoto. Nara definitely a plus. Walking around Kyoto, bamboo forest, monkey sanctuary, all yeses for us. I would skip Universal Japan, and I would probably skip the samurai experience. I don't know. But Charlie enjoyed it. He's 13. He did the samurai experience in Kyoto, and he liked it. A little cheesy, but he liked it.
That sounds like a super touristy, cheesy thing. But
It was exactly that. Yes, it was perfect for a 13-year-old who wanted to learn how to be a samurai.
Did you go to the major shrines? Check it out, the Golden Shrine, all that stuff.
So we didn't get so we were on our way to that shrine, and it was the only day it rained, and so thunderstorms started when we were about a quarter of a mile from that shrine, and we just bailed. So we did the shrine in Nara. We missed that shrine. We did a couple of shrines in Tokyo, but we did not get in. There were 2 shrines in Kyoto that we wanted to get to. One we just ran out of time, and the other one thunderstorms chased us back to the hotel.
Would you recommend Tokyo or Kyoto if people had to, like, so you got a quick stopover? You got
Kyoto,
only 2
final
days.
answer, easy. Yeah.
Yeah,
Not
easy.
even. Tokyo is an amazing place in just like in size and scale, but Kyoto just felt much more authentic to us. We enjoyed it. You could see the history, you could see the culture. You know, the shrines were that we did visit were awesome. I just think it was more our speed. Tokyo's fine. You know, you've been there. You know, it's fine. It's just not my jam.
Yeah. Going for a good walkabout in Kyoto, I enjoyed. You can find one of the little cafes to sit down and one little izakayas to sit down and have a beer or get some grilled meat, some purple sweet potatoes, all kinds of good stuff just to have a walkabout. It's a really cool place.
Yeah, I would agree with you. Like, I think easy city to walk around. I also think like if you're worried about Americanized, there's enough Americanized stuff there. You know, there's some McDonald's, there's some KFCs in the downtown area. There's like a shopping area like along the water there that was we had gone there to go hit an izakaya and the samurai experience. But there were some Americanized restaurants outside of the markets. But we found plenty of great food for not a lot of money that was, you know, obviously authentic, you know, Japanese cuisine and ate a lot of ramen and wagyu and all that stuff and really enjoyed it.
Cool, man. Much more to come on your Japan trip
Yes.
next episode, I'm sure.
Yep.
So
We'll talk Tokyo. We'll talk Disney. We got a lot to catch up on. But since you had a crazy week and we're both like utterly exhausted from travel, talk a little bit about your I don't even know to call it an adventure, but whatever the heck happened with your American Airlines ticket booked through Alaska. Booked through Cathay, connecting in Chicago that somehow turned into British Airways first.
Yeah, man. So I had to go to London for 2 meetings. One was Virgin Atlantic and one with British Airways and their parent group, IAG Loyalty. And it was going to be a super quick trip because I had to be here in Vegas for Virtuoso Hotel Week, which is kind of like Super Bowl for luxury hotels. So I was like, I cannot do this 2 hours of sleep on the overnight flight to Europe so you can hit the ground running. So I said, hey, I'm going to try to take the daytime flight. So I tried to take the Dulles daytime flight, but that doesn't exist anymore. And in order to catch the Newark daytime flight on United, there's no flight enough early from Atlanta. And let's not kid ourselves. Atlanta to Newark's not going to be on time anyways.
No.
So I found the American daytime flight that left Chicago or leaves Chicago like 8:30 in the morning. You land at Heathrow at 10. I was like, perfect. I can literally sit during the regular work day on the Wi-Fi that for the most part works on international carriers. And then when I land, you go to bed, wake up the next morning, and I will go to meetings. And I was like, this sounds lovely. Like, why haven't I done this every single time? And I think you've done it before because
I have.
Everybody who's taken the daytime flight to London is like, oh, it's so much better.
Oh, night and day difference the way you feel on day 2.
Yeah. So it was like a 6 a.m. from Atlanta to Chicago, hour and a half layover, and then Chicago to London. So the day before, which, hey, props to American for giving me this much heads up. But I looked at that flight history. It's the first flight out of the day, obviously leaving Atlanta at 6 a.m. You know, the flight gets in the night before like 10. And for the most part, it looks like it was on time. The day before my flight up to Chicago, they canceled the flight. And I was like, oh boy, what's going on? Like maybe it looks like a little bit of weather in Chicago, but wasn't that bad. But sure enough, the afternoon before I was supposed to fly, got an email, hey, your flight tomorrow morning is canceled, which means I cannot.
This is mainline, right? This is original.
Right. It was a A319 mainline. Yeah. So I was like, well, that's interesting. They're canceling this early, but now there's no way to get to Chicago. I mean, at that time, I could have tried to run to get the last United flight out of the day. But then because this ticket was booked through Cathay, and I can't remember why I did that now, but I'm sure I had a good reason at the time. I couldn't call them and just drop the segment. They were like, no, if you drop the segment, we got to cancel the whole ticket. So I was like, great, I'm going to show up. Even if I get to Chicago, I'm going to get to the boarding area for the game. They're like, oh, your ticket's canceled. You don't have a flight. So I was like, great. So American canceled, Cathay ticket books. They ended up putting me on the British Airways flight from Atlanta to London nonstop. Leaves Atlanta at 10:30 p.m., gets into London at noon. Again, like it's just going to be another couple hours of sleep. Then I was like, yeah, and it's the old Club World, which is 8 across, man. And I cannot say that I've had anybody say anything much good about the 8 across Club World seats, where they're staggered like you're supposed to have direct aisle access, but you don't. Even the people's feet are out next to you and you're just crawling over somebody's feet. I was like, I don't want to do this. I have to crawl over somebody and get 2 hours of sleep. So I looked, and I happened to be that first class for that flight was wide open. Again, booking through Cathay, 100,000 Cathay miles, plus only $200 in surcharges versus like me booking through Avios. It's like $1,000 in surcharges. So just remember that, ladies and gentlemen, always book British Airways through Cathay, because I did the exact same thing coming home, booked the nonstop Atlanta or London to Atlanta first class using Cathay. Yeah, and again, it was like a third the surcharge that British Airways wanted for that same flight. So long story short, woe is me. I got a flight. I ended up somehow on British Airways round trip first class, using miles. Look, great product. I would call it equivalent to a really nice business class. Like does not have the same feeling as Lufthansa or Swiss or there's a little lot from here, but like it's British Airways first class is a very great way to cross the Atlantic. Crew was wonderful, food decent, again, but still only got a couple hours of sleep, and then you hit the ground and you're struggling through. So I stayed at the Great Scotland Yard, which I had not stayed at before. It's a block off of Trafalgar Square. Very easy to get to. There are a bunch of different tube stations. Very easy to take the Heathrow Express to Paddington, and then a quick tube ride down to Charing Cross, and you just walk to a Great Scotland Yard. I hear that they upgrade the list to their suites a lot, but the suites were booked. So they gave me their best king room. Again, pretty small room, American size, but pretty decent size room. London wise, location was fantastic. The breakfast and the whole downstairs vibe is great. Amazing cocktails. That's their bar down there. They have an afternoon tea place. You talked about it, really cool, unique decor in the rooms. It was a great place. Would definitely stay there again. You can easily walk to, Downing Street and Big Ben, and right across the river from London Eye. So like just a fantastic central spot. A little bit pricey, but kind of everything last week in London was pricey. So I think I had to pay £400 a night for the hotel. But again, it was kind of what everything in central London needed to be, where my two meetings were. Both Virgin and IAG's offices are pretty close to that center area. So it was a wild trip, man. Like definitely my shortest trip to Europe. Have you ever done like a day and back or overnight and then back from Europe? Like this was 2 nights back and home for a day, and then Spirit big front seat out to Vegas, which was actually one of the best flights I've had in a long time. Flights there. But yeah, London was great, man. The weather was just so fantastic. It was super, it was 70 degrees and sunny. I was, not 98 like it is back in Georgia, or the 108 it is outside here in Vegas right now, which I don't care if it's a dry heat. It's freaking hot outside. Like I did a quick walk last night from Planet Hollywood across the street to Bellagio. And just at 8 minutes outside at like the 108, I was like, this is, like, I don't know why people choose to live here and do this. With quite a whirlwind. We try to think of anything else, man. I was just reminded again, London travel is so easy, man. Like it's a 7-hour flight over. So easy to get around. The tube's great. Everybody was talking about like, oh, don't go. There's all those UK when all the unrest is going on over there. It's completely fine. The news makes it sound like there's a riot on every single corner. What's going on? Had a lovely steak and ale pie and some mushy peas and a pint my first night, and really enjoyed it. Just wish was not soon.
Yeah, so a couple of things. I looked it up while you were chatting. The Great Scotland Yard is a Category 6 in the World of Hyatt program, which means 21 to 29,000 points a night. Now, I don't even remember what the cheapest property is in London for the Hyatt program. We were actually just having this discussion, Molly, in the Slack community.
Yeah, I think Category 5, right?
I think probably. We know there's no Category 4 because that was part of the discussion. Yep. So, like, it is a pricey amount of points, but to your point, I mean, you paid £400, and I don't know what the conversion rate is currently, but you talk about it's usually call it $2 to the pound ish, maybe one.
It's looks like $510 a night for £400.
Yeah, that's a lot. So, but that conversion is a lot closer than I thought it was. anyway, so you're going to get, I think you're almost always going to get reasonable value out of Hyatt points when you're booking rooms in London, just because the rates do stay pretty high. To your point, hotels well located. It's lots of little touches when I was there, that I noted, like little dog coat hangers and stuff like that. And then,
and the complimentary mini bar. It's not booze,
Yep.
but it was 2 sparkling waters, 2 still waters, 2 Diet Cokes, 2 Cokes, and like ginger ale. And I was so freaking dehydrated from all the travel that I was just, it was great to have a free mini bar right there in the room.
Yeah. And they don't have, if you're traveling with a family, just know that you're almost certainly going to need 2 rooms. It's not a property that has a lot of big rooms or suites that work well for family upgrades. Even though the rooms are nicely appointed, bathroom was great for the room I had, all that stuff. It's just, there aren't a lot of rooms that have 2 beds, and there aren't a lot.
I think they have one, the Sherlock suite, I think is the only one that can take a family, is what I read the flyer talk thread on the property. So I think it's the only one that can take a family.
Yeah. That definitely sounds right. But well located, like you said, you can walk and tube to a bunch of different stuff from there. And so, I'm not, there's lots of great Hyatts in London. So I'm not saying that this is my favorite for sure, but I would absolutely go back and stay at Great Scotland Yard again. I'll be interested to try, I think for my next trip to London, which is November, I think the new Park Hyatt will be open. So I may try to use some points and try that out. Because gosh knows, I don't think I'll ever be able to afford a cash rate at that property. But I don't think you can go wrong with Great Scotland Yard. On the British Airways side of things, I think what you've said for folks who are listening in, I think that's pretty consistent with what folks have said about what the first class product is like. It's got a little bit of age on it. It's perfectly fine. Seats are nice size. You won't have problems with the, tiny footwells and things like that. So you definitely have plenty of space, unlike say the coffin class on Delta. And if I remember correctly, you get Concorde room access in London, right?
You did if your flight leaves at a Terminal 5. Mine, unfortunately, left at a Terminal 3. And it's not like in the airports, you can't quickly hop from Terminal 5 to Terminal 3 in Heathrow. So sadly, did not get that. I did check out the Cathay Pacific First Class Lounge, which is in Terminal 3. And it was great. They had a little a la carte restaurant where I got some noodles and champagne. And it was perfectly lovely. And then I did go check out the British Airways Galleries Lounge in Terminal 3, which has a first class section. It was whatever. It was, again, fine. But if you fly first class at Terminal 3, I would definitely stick with Cathay. I also hear the Qantas Lounge there is really good, but I just ran out of time. So I was going straight from meetings. Didn't get to check out the other Qantas Lounge.
Yeah, I think so. I do think you can. Not that I'm saying you should have done this, to be clear. I think you can check in Terminal 5 and go to the lounges there and then transfer to Terminal 3, but I think you're going to re-clear security if you do that. I think you have to leave the secure area, which in most cases isn't going to be worth it. I think in Terminal 3, I really like the Virgin Lounge there. I haven't been in that Cathay Lounge you were in. Those lounges are fine. And I would say the last time I was on the Concorde Lounge in T5, it's got some age on it too. It's perfectly fine. It just, it rarely has a lot of people, but has some age on it. So you missed much.
No, I've done the Concorde room once about almost 6 years ago now. It's hard to believe. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I don't think we're going to get time to cover Southwest. So maybe we'll try and lump Southwest and Spirit together next week. But I think, just to sort of wrap up with a very short story, since Richard and I were going to be in person and the show's on video now, that certainly involves a little bit of a more complicated lift. So I had put together some gear and I brought my deck with me and the camera and all that and tripod. And it was going to be complicated to get everything set up. Your flight landed a little bit late, flying Spirit. I picked you up at the airport the whole bit. And I think by the time we tried to figure out how to make all the pieces fit, we were both just so utterly exhausted that we're we just need to go have dinner. So we decided that we were to record the old-fashioned way. I forgot to leave a mic for you, so Jeremiah's going to kill me when he gets the audio. But we did have dinner at one of my favorite places in Vegas, Zuma. And you and I had been there 6 years ago.
Jeez, yeah. 2019, maybe 5 years ago, which is just unbelievable.
Yeah.
Hard to believe.
And I remember you enjoying it, and I figured since it had been a long time, you'd be fine going back. I go back pretty frequently, but it's one of those places that I really recommend to folks when they go to Vegas. And I think for all intents and purposes, I would say, I don't think there were any plates you didn't enjoy.
No. we dominated, man. Because I had I flew Spirit again, big front seat out, and I didn't have any snacks or anything on the plane, so I was it's like solid over on the plane over 4 hours door to door. So I was hungry, man. We crushed all those plates, and they were just freaking delicious. It's how do you just describe it? It's almost like a Japanese Americana fusion restaurant. We ordered a little a la carte plates of dishes that they cooked over the fire, and it's so good.
I call it Japanese tapas because a lot of the plates are small. Like I think they have a handful of entrees we've ordered from time, but there's there's three kitchens working. There's a sushi kitchen, there's a robata grill, and then there's just the as you mentioned, the fusion kitchen. And almost all the plates are small, and they're all incredible. They do a great job timing and coursing. We had a bottle of my current favorite wine, 8 Years in the Desert, an Orange Swift wine, to finish us off, and then we skipped dessert at Zuma, and we went over to Ski Lodge and had s'mores at the bar. Well, you didn't have s'mores. I had s'mores at the bar at Ski Lodge, which is still probably my favorite speakeasy in Vegas, and I think you enjoyed it, no?
That was super cool. I walked by that door 100 times just back in May when I was staying at Cosmo, walking to Aria for the conference every day. Never noticed it. It's just a little nondescript door. It's got a little man on a ski. Yeah, that was really cool. I got a ton of comments back on the Instagram story. Apparently, I'm the only person who didn't know about this. Everybody was raving about how cool that place was. I tell you, man, we walked back. We had meetings and stuff for the conference last night. And by the time we walked by that at like 11:30, the line to get in was around the corner.
Stupid, yes.
Yeah, so go early. You're going to try and outwait line.
Yeah, it's got 8 tables, maybe 10 seats at the bar. It's tiny. But I mean, for folks that don't know about it, like on top of the fact that it's just very authentic, the white staff also wear ski jumpers. And if you get it at the right time, the abominable snowman will chase the staff around inside the restaurant. And then if you're really lucky, you'll watch him propose to one of the waitresses, and then later they get married. So like it's a fun little shtick. But you're right. We walked in there on the earlier side. I mean, probably before 9:00. And I think we got the last 2 seats that were empty in the building. And 2 people had just gotten up and we sat down. And my guess would be after that, there was a line there.
But you get to sit at the bar and like cook little s'mores over a little open, I guess it's a little piece of charcoal or something in there that they had. Pretty cool Vegas experience. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to you getting some sleep, man. I don't know.
It's not going to be the next 2 days.
Where in the world are you going to be the next time we record? Are you actually getting some time at home?
I'm going to be home, man. Yeah, by the time this drops, it will be my daughter Mary's 8th birthday on the Wednesday that this episode drops, and I will have flown home the day before. And I will be home for at least a week and a half, man. I can't wait. It's great.
Nice. Well, I'm putting you on notice that we may need to record a little bit early because after this episode drops, we will be mere days away from us dropping our oldest kid off at college. So it's right here, man. It's around the corner.
Oof.
Yep.
Get the handkerchief ready.
Hyatt Place, Blacksburg, man. I have a feeling I'm going to be staying there a lot for the next 4 years.
Quite a bit.
All right. Well, safe travels back. You have secured the big front seat for the ride home, right?
I have, absolutely. Yeah.
Excellent.
Not a very good on-time record for this flight, so fingers crossed nothing wild happens.
Yeah, and you will once again, since you haven't been to Vegas very often lately, you will once again experience the phenomenon that flights that leave Vegas bound for anywhere else in the world are just a very different vibe from the flights that are heading to Vegas. So
yeah, I'll be stepping over everybody in the terminal, in the Spirit terminal there in Vegas, who probably had a very rough night the evening.
I will look forward to hearing your stories about it. I hope you enjoy your big front seat experience. Get yourself a little nap on the way home, and you and I will regroup and we'll talk Tokyo Disney, Tokyo Disney Sea, Fantasy Springs, Southwest Spirit, all the things, Mr. Kerr.
All the things, man. Never a shortage of information.
Never. Mr. Jeremiah, wherever you are, I apologize for the fact that Mr. Kerr's audio is pretty winky this week with the headphones. I'm sorry.
Pretty winky? Is that?
I'm sorry I did not leave you a microphone. I'm sorry, Mr. Kerr. But the headphones look great on you. I really do.
Thank you very much. Yeah. Accent all the hair I have up here. Yeah.
All the hair. All right. Safe travels, Mr. Kerr. I'm going to go barbecue for my daughter's friends until we upload again. We've got miles to go. It's fine. It's just not my jam.